I personally don't even know where to start, because you have like 100 different titles and 100 different accomplishments. So I don't let's we we just gotta start from beginning, right? Um,
Any which way, just natural flow we deal with.
all right. So what was your household like growing up?
That's a good place to start. Okay, so my daddy, A.D. Scott, is a very well-known art, let's say, collector and promoter. And he actually has a collection at the National Gallery of Jamaica called the A.D. Scott Collection. And he really always promoted artwork, I would say artwork. Um, he wasn't really an artist himself, although he became like a sculptor over time. And there's some sculptures in Jamaica that are still standing in University of the West Indies and different places. But essentially, he loved artwork and loved the promotion of artwork. And he was a great patron of the arts. And he was, yeah, a great. He built I would say this is a big accomplishment even for Jamaica, um, International Art Center called Olympia. It's right there standing opposite UTEC. Um, and this is where he brought artists from all over the world, including a lot from Africa, to really celebrate and give them space to expose them, to do, um, one man, one woman shows, and really people who have a lot of talent but don't have a lot of visibility and stage to put that forward. And he used to really provide that. So, as part of my household, I grew up in a household where artwork was very big, not just visual art, but also dance and music. So I grew up very much in a cultural household, I would say. My mother now, on the other hand, she was very much both of them were very down to earth people, very frugal, very no, very low ego, very just living people. And she was worked at the University of the West Indies with children. She was a pediatrician, and she worked with children at those times in with a lot of suffering from malnutrition. And she grew up as a doctor in the University of the West Indies. So that was my household, and I was born in a family of four children, and we all came out of a K tradition. So that has continued. We're now looking at the birth of K19, I think it is, which is the birth of my daughter and actually Chronics, who are bringing forth a child. They're very private about it, so I don't want to big it up, but to me, it's life and it's celebration, and it's K19, so we're bigging up that continuation of the K tradition. Yeah.
So I thank you for explaining everything. I understand stuff clearly now. It's a bloodline thing because you grew up in an intellectual and a cultural environment, and I see that you're continuing that with your own offspring. So we give thanks for that, right? So you went to Boston University, then you went to Harvard, right? How was that?
Mhm.
Before we even get there, at what point in your life did you say that Rastafari?
Well, as most people who live the life of Rastafari, it's not really something you decide. It's something like that's just in you, and it's just when it really manifests, I would say. So I was always a born as a natural Rasta, as they say. We have a music called "Born as a Natural Rasta," um, and in fact, when the is everything is mystical, and everything is destiny. But I remember when the coming of His Majesty, it was I think it was 1965. I was a young child then, and my parents dressed me up as as a Ras, call a mop head on me, and my brother as Haile Selassie with all the you know um, awards and jewel, the titles and the hat and the whole regalia.
Yeah.
And so to me that was almost like at the age of 5 I was being put forward as the image of Rastafari, which was just kind of interesting to look forward on now. But all throughout high school, I was the one with the chucky boots and drawing maps of Africa and you know exercise books, and just claiming Africa and Africanness. And it was part of also my father's influence. He was working a lot on anti-apartheid contributions through art and music and culture, and that was, I would think, part of the influence for me. So the sighting up of really Rastafari for me was over time, and the one thing that was difficult for me was really the reconciling the church part of it, because I used to read Bible, in those times of the 70s and thing, is something where there was much more gathering and, over the chalice and reading the Bible, and much more, I would say, much more bingy gatherings and much more communal, I would think, outside of the music, much more communing amongst Rastafari brethren and sisters, and I lived through that era. So yeah, then it was the coming into the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which my family, husband, children were baptized in Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This was even before I went to Ethiopia.
Yeah.
20 years before. So that was when I was able to reconcile that kind of dilemma or tension I had about, Rasta used to burn church. So how church coming at this,
Yeah.
And so that whole acceptance of Jesus Christus, was for me now became something I could embrace, but through the lens of more of an African lens, and more that's sat more comfortably then with the spirit,
What was some of the literature your parents were reading at that time? Because obviously you grew up, I guess you were somewhat ostracized by your peers due to the lifestyle you were living.
Yeah, I was just we did an Ethiopian Christmas performance in Jamaica on the 7th of January, just a couple of weeks ago. And, one of the persons were saying, Ras Miguel Lawn, another really respected elder within the Rastafari faith. So if you don't experience oppression or some kind of ostracization is like something not right, then you can't really be living the life of Rastafari, and especially in the times that I lived through.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a kind of I would say a kind of two-sided part of even my own man, that he so wanted the best for me that it was difficult for him to see me adopt the Rastafari lifestyle, I think. He used to embrace Rastafari, but for his daughter, it was like he was just worried, I think, for that kind of being sidelined, being out, like being the outcast of society. And so there was that little tension. But I experienced it within my household, when you cooking your own ital food when the rest of the families at
Yeah.
so it's inevitable. So yes, there was a lot of that, and even some of the inspiration of the music I have now. I have a music called Love of Jah, and that was one of my earliest music, and it really came out of that, like that it's they ask I how I can carry the cross, standing firm to all those blows they give I for serving Jaja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did the music come prior to you leaving and going to America, or did it come while in America?
That was also prior. That was very much coming up through teenage as part of the embracing the Rastafari lifestyle, way of life. So yeah, music was part of that reality and the way of expressing and being able to move amongst those who are also living a similar life and expressing the same way. So it's a kind of a strength, a kind of strength and comfort zone.
All right. So so how did you I would just wanna understand the story clearly. How was it going to Boston University first of all? Because Massachusetts is a very they're not too open to different type of people. And how was that coming from Jamaica, going to Boston, and being a person trying to Rastafari during that time?
Yeah, there was nothing comfortable about Boston University. First of all, I received a scholarship. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, but it didn't really cover everything. And so, it was, I couldn't, I had to live in a lower class white neighborhood called Somerville. And it was the first time I realized, coming as a light skinned Jamaican, right?
Yeah.
But in Jamaica at that time, you never really, them used to call you Dundos or, red gal or, but it's not something you ever take. It's just your brethren and your sister and them. It's not anything you take on. But it's in America where I realized what is racism. So yeah, that was a very, very racist neighborhood. I used to ride a little moped to get around. And by that time, I had my first child, and having to go to class on the moped with my baby. And I remember them flinging egg after me and, drunk on a Friday, Saturday night, spitting after me. Yeah, a whole heap of things. So those were some of the low times, of experiencing people and their weaknesses and hang-ups and problems. And the cold Charles River. So there was a lot of downsides to Boston, but the learning part and the being excited about learning and different exposure to different opportunities, that was positive.
So all right, so you had your first child while you were in Boston.
When actually I was, yeah.
So that was just a grind in itself. Then you had the child, you're trying to do the school, and you're away from home.
Yeah. I kind of, my children are now saying, "Boy, Mama, how did you do it?" Because they're like having to. It's a grind, and you have to have grit if you want to do it all.